на пороге следующего, 25-го года существования советского правительства. Она заставила перестроить стиль нашей работы на войну. Она превратила нашу страну в единый и всеобъемлющий тыл, обслуживающий фронт, обслуживающий нашу Красную Армию, наш военно-морской флот. Период мирного строительства кончился. Начался период освободительной войны с немецкими захватчиками. Предпринимая нападение на нашу страну, немецко-фашистские захватчики считали:
from your slumber, arise, ye prisoners of want. That's right. For reason in revolt now thunder, chains of hatred, greed, and fear. Ha ha! Away with all your superstitions. Serve our masses. Arise, arise. We'll change henceforth the old tradition and spurn the dust to win the prize. So comrades, come on and rally. Then the last fight, let us face. The International unites the whole darn human race. So comrades, come on, let's go rally. And the last fight, let us face. The International unites the whole darn human race. No more deluded by reaction. On tyrants only will make war. The soldiers too will take strike action. They'll break ranks and fight no more. And if those cannibals keep trying to sacrifice us to their pride, each at the forge must do their duty, and we'll strike while the iron is hot. So comrades, come on, let's go rally. And the last fight, let us face. The International unites the whole beautiful human race. So comrades, come on, let's go rally. Ha! And the last fight, let us face. The International unites the whole darn human race.
Hello and welcome to Revolutionary Kicks. I am your host, Hayes, as always. Today we are here to talk about Che, Part 1, Michael Soderbergh's 2008 epic on the life and death of Che Guevara. Before we get going, it is worth noting that this is, as aforementioned, Part 1 of a two-part series. I don't know, series. Really, it's, is that like half a joke, Keish? Uh-oh. I'm gonna be echoing very quietly for a minute. I just fixed it. It sounds like you could play it at a store and the boss thinks it's Christmas music. It did sound like Christmas music. That's what I thought it was. When it first started. 1 second, let me pause my second window because that's distracting me. So like I said, this is just part 1 of a 2-part film, and as a standalone movie, it's kind of weird, which we'll get into as we analyze it in a little bit. But fret not, for we will be watching part 2 next Sunday, and we'll be able to really dive in. I hope this doesn't sound awful. I'm sorry. I'm trying to fix. Okay, one sec. I need to. I take my mic off when I'm not streaming because the way I have it set up is very in the way. So let me try. I don't know if that's doing anything. Fuck, I've only made it worse. Hey, one sec, chat. Fuck. I dropped a screw. Glad to have you. Okay, one sec. I have to screw this in, but the right way. Talk amongst yourselves while I figure this out. It's okay, Keish, I forgive you. Thank you for following. Okay. So Che, part 1. Like I said, this movie is directed by Michael Soderbergh, I believe. Benicio del Toro plays the titular Che Guevara in it, and his performance is out of this world. So before we get into picking apart the movie and analysis, we're just going to do a brief summary. And unfortunately for me, I hate having to summarize movies that have multiple timelines, which this one does. So we're just going to simplify that. Within this movie, there are 3 different time periods and places that happen. They're all in different places, helpfully. So chronologically, the first one is in Mexico. The one that takes up the brunt of the film is in Cuba, and the last part is in at the United Nations. What do you call the main United Nations building? That place? I don't know. The headquarters, I guess, but it's at like the United Nations headquarters. And those are all, like I said, it's that order chronologically. However, they are all interspliced and unfolding at the same time. The one that has the least prominent appearance is the United Nations Assembly. That sounds good. We can go with that. The one that's the shortest is in Mexico, and this is the first one. So this is when Che Guevara meets. Well, I imagine there's more than one UN building is the thing. It's just the main one. So Che Guevara meets Fidel Castro when Fidel is in exile in Mexico after the I believe it's after Fidel's attack, like the July of 26th attack on, I don't remember, it's some like armory, I believe, and he's put in jail, and then I don't think anybody would ever I don't understand why people in history do this. They take a charismatic leader who has tried to overthrow the state, and instead of they just exile them. It's like, why do you do that? You're like asking for trouble by doing that. But that's what they do. Instead of keeping him in prison or anything, they just exile him to, exile, you just say they can't stay there. But he goes to Mexico, right? And Che has been traveling around Latin America, right? And he finds himself in Mexico, and he's interested in meeting Fidel. So in the movie, he is waiting for him in an apartment to come talk to him. And what's interesting, that's what's up. What's interesting is each segment of the film. So the three different timelines: Mexico, Cuba, and the United Nations, are filmed very differently. So it was a barracks, Moncada Barracks. Thank you, Quiche. I'm probably going to have to look to y'all for a lot of the historical events. Shoot. What am I saying? Oh, yes, they're all filmed very differently. The United Nations timeline is filmed in black and white, and kind of in like a documentary style. There's a lot of it is interviews and speeches, but as well as like some behind the scenes stuff, I guess, and it's very interesting. The Mexico timeline there's incredibly like yellow, like inside lighting. It's filmed from all these really bizarre angles. Like there's a shot specifically where they're capturing Fidel through like this mirror above a dining room table, and it's just very interesting. And like I said, the lighting is very much indoor lighting, but like not like it's yellow, just yellow. I think the house is also yellow too. Like everything's yellow in the house. I don't know why, but it's just interesting. I think it's done like the flashbacks are never confusing because like it only tells you where it is the first time. It's like Mexico, Cuba, whatever on the bottom of the screen with the text, and then after that it doesn't do that anymore. But you know where it is because they all look so starkly different. If it's black and white, you know that it's after the revolution. If it's yellow, you know it's before the revolution. And of course the meat of the film is during the Cuban Revolution. So anyways, Che and Fidel meet, and you get to see a lot of the actor who plays Fidel Castro does a wonderful job of it's very fun. They have him talk in conversation like he does during his speeches. Like he moves in the same way, which I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, I haven't met the guy, but it's very funny. But he does a very good job. And you can tell Che is like listening to what he has to say, and he's like, I think this guy, I'm going to put my support behind this guy. We'll get into the relationship specifically between like the politics of Che Guevara and Fidel as we go along, because and it's something this movie I think comments on a little bit, but not too much. But we get to like Che is like interested in he's like, this guy knows what he's doing. Like he clearly like he has a plan, and he thinks that he's the guy for the job for this national liberation movement, which is important to keep in your head that's what Che see. I think that's what Fidel and the Castros see it as, but that's definitely what Che is looking at this as. This is a movement for national liberation, more so than a communist or socialist revolution, right? The Che quotes that are mentioned, yeah, he they squeeze a few of his iconic quotes in there during his interview, and then there's one part where there's only like one segment in which there's monologue, and that's also they're reading something from I think from Guerrilla Warfare, from his version of Guerrilla Warfare, which I just now like that's the only time there's voiceover, and it's when he's reading that section of Guerrilla Warfare in which he's like, the strength of the troops it's like the amount of soldiers times X, where X is the willpower or whatever. Yeah, they squeezed that quote in. So, yeah, the thing with Mexico, it's just them talking. Che decides he's going to go along with it. They leave on a boat from Mexico with 80 soldiers, 80 guerrillas. And Che comments that of that 80, only 12 will live to see the end of the revolution. Then I'm not going to go through everything that happens in the revolutionary timeline because it is a whole lot, and we'll get into it when we are, analyzing more of the film. But basically, it's just it's what Che's up to during the revolution. What do they call it? The March of the Wounded. After one of their first skirmishes, a lot of their soldiers get wounded, and he marches with them across some mountains and stuff, and it's really arduous or whatever. And he says that during that time is when he became the revolutionary that he is today. He says they move in from the countryside to eventually the urban population, and that's where the latter half of the movie spends. We spend a lot of time in these cities, clearing out cities and taking over the remnants of Bautista's army, which is very fun. The film does a good job of you really feel involved and immersed in these skirmishes. And like I said, chronologically what happens next, but in the movie this is happening at the same time as all the other stuff, and it's cutting back and forth. Che goes to America to speak at the United Nations in New York. I presume that's where that building is, and I know that's where that building is. I don't presume. And he does an interview, which a lot of the what do you call it? There's a lot of off-screen narration, and it's him doing the interview as it cuts back and forth between shit from him actually in the revolution. And he gives a speech in which he talks about their executions and everything. I'm sure he talks about more than that, but that's what we get to see of that speech. And there's a part where these people get to respond to what he said, and then he comes back and he gets the final response. And specifically the nations that the movie depicts him having some sort of dialogue with are the United States of America, Panama, and Venezuela. He has a dialogue between these the representatives of these countries. I'm pretty sure that's all that happens in the UN timeline. I mean, well, there's other set dressing stuff, but yeah, thank you, Pizzadabot. But for the most part, that's the big stuff that happens. So now to kind of I think, by the way, this is going to be one of the shorter episodes because, like I said, this is only part one of a two-part film, which we're going to finish watching next week. And because of that, I believe that the analysis that we have the ability to do is very muted. That's not the only reason why I believe this will be shorter. Another reason is this movie is a historical film, and now it's not. I don't know what the term is for that. It's not historical fiction, it is depicting a historical event. And according to Soderbergh, the director, nothing that happens in this movie, nothing that is depicted, did not actually happen. Everything that happens in the movie provably happened in real life. And Soderbergh and the writers, the team who make this movie, do not take any artistic liberty when it comes to depicting Che Guevara as a character. So I think this is we can compare this to a movie that we've watched on the show already, which is The Red Detachment of Women, which is also a story about revolution and a revolutionary, albeit a fictional one, I think. She's a fictional character. She might be based on someone real, but Shanghua, Wu Shanghua is a fictional character. And in this revolutionary tale, Wu Shanghua is like a full, she's like a character, a fully fleshed out character who has, she learns lessons and she changes fundamentally as like a person throughout the film. Right, but it's not actually a documentary because it's actors and stuff. So that's definitely not the term. But so when comparing this with The Red Detachment of Women, which has a lot of lessons that specifically are being taught to the audience, like it has several themes that it's getting across, several morals that it is attempting to communicate to the audience. And our protagonist, Wu Shanghua, learns these lessons with the audience. So there's a transformation from Wu Shanghua from a strong-headed, like ultra-left fighter who is brazen and uneducated into like this full communist revolutionary who's principled and disciplined, right? So the movie's communicating that. In this film, the Che Guevara at the very beginning of the film and the Che Guevara at the very end of it are exactly the same Che Guevara. Not exactly, I think he would reject that, but largely, I believe the point is that it's the same Che Guevara. In fact, near the end of the film, while Guevara is being interviewed by this woman in America, it cuts back to him, and so like in the movie, this is after like we've seen him finish the revolution. We've seen him. They've taken over Las Villas and they're heading to Havana, and I forget the question that the interviewer asks him, but there's a flashback to him and Fidel in Mexico, and he had told Fidel had asked him, "Do you think I'm crazy?" And Che was like, "You seem like a little crazy, yeah." And then Che asks Fidel, like, "You have to promise me something, though." And Fidel's like, "What?" And he's like, "That when we're done with this revolution, you help me spread the revolution to the rest of Latin America." And Fidel looks at him for a minute, and he takes a drink, and he goes, "Maybe you're a little too crazy, too." And they, like, kind of laugh and share this, like, camaraderie or whatever in the moment. And then it cuts to him on the boat, which we saw before, the boat on the way to Cuba. It cuts to him there staring off into the sea, like as he's about to take part in this revolution. And I think that this film is showing Che Guevara on like this very single-minded path where he is a revolutionary. That's what he is. And he's not like, he talks about learning some lessons. Actually, he doesn't. The interviewer asks him, for instance, like when Fidel tells him to like go do this mission, this assignment that isn't as exciting or heroic or whatever. She asks him if it was like hard for him to do that, and he's like, no, like that's what you do as a revolutionary. As a revolutionary, you go where you're told, and sometimes that involves doing things that aren't the most exciting, that aren't the most heroic. But like every job is a important job, and like so you have to do like treat them all the same way with the same amount of pride or whatever. So you don't see him learn that lesson. Instead, what he's doing is communicating that that's a lesson that he has learned, because presumably the transformation of Che Guevara from a member of liberal bourgeois society to communist revolutionary happened before I think so, Keish. Yeah, absolutely. Happened before this film. The transformation of Che Guevara from Ernesto to Che happens before this film. We don't get to see that. So this film isn't focused on that, on this transformation of a character. He is the same character at the end of the film as he is in the beginning of the film. He hasn't learned any lessons. He hasn't developed as a character at all. He's just participated in this event. The only thing that's changed from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie is, in the beginning of the movie, he's in Mexico, and Cuba is under the dictatorship of Bautista. At the end of the movie, he is in the United States of America, and Cuba now belongs to the Cuban people, right? And that is the only thing that has changed is Cuba. Che hasn't changed. Che is the same man that he was going into it as he is going out of it, and he's going to continue. His role as a revolutionary. The woman at the interviewer asks him, she says, like, once you become a revolutionary, you never stop or whatever. And he's like, he says, like, yes, I have no plans to retire, I believe is his response. So I think that is partially due to the fact that this is just part 1 of part 2. Like I said, really this film is a 5-hour movie is what it is. Like, it's just a 5-hour movie that they've split into 2 parts. It's not like it is an incomplete story. Che has not had an arc, And I think when we watch part 2, we'll talk about it. But I think there is more of an arc there. But also another reason I feel like they don't, develop Che's character too much or whatever is because the directors, the team who are making it, it says story by Che Guevara and Peter Buckman here. They took the book Che writes about the Cuban Revolution is where they get the script or whatever from. So this guy adapts it or whatever. But they're not taking, like I mentioned it before, they're not taking a lot of liberties with this. They're portraying exactly what happened. They're not trying to even put any lessons on top of it for us to learn as the audience. They're not trying to use this story to communicate some larger idea. They are simply just telling the story. They're just getting in and out and relaying to us exactly what happens. Now, by doing this, by just objectively relaying these events of Che Guevara's life, it serves as, it serves a kind of revolutionary role just by depicting the life of Che Guevara, because Che Guevara was an incredible revolutionary. And just by portraying that, even if you're not the theme of the movie isn't fully endorsing, communism or whatever, it it's portraying someone who does. Interesting. Now, the film, it's not as if the film has no voice, right? Because the film chooses what to include and what not to include, for instance. Something that, it's Steven Soderbergh. I said Michael Soderbergh. Something that Steven Soderbergh responds to is a lot of the criticism of this movie when it came out is that, I don't know about a lot of the criticism, but some of the criticism from liberals receiving this was that it doesn't depict the evil side of Che as much. It doesn't show him presiding over all these executions that he carried out. And this confuses me because this movie does explicitly show executions carried out by Che Guevara, and he speaks on it within the film. And Soderbergh responds by just saying, that's not interesting to me. That wasn't interesting to me. I didn't want to include all that in the movie because it's not compelling or whatever. So, he's chosen to exclude this, but he hasn't chosen to not comment on the executions carried out by Che, because we do see we do see an execution within the film, which there are 3. You only see one of them shot, but like they're all shot presumably. Actually, you only see 2 on trial. There were 3 of them, but you only see 2 caught. So I don't know what happened in the third one. What they believe to be the evil side, Quiche, that he, of course, that they believe that he is racist and homophobic and a murderer, which we'll get into some of that in a little bit. But it does depict the execution of these 2 soldiers who deserted from their unit, rob a peasant family, rape that peasant family's daughter, burn down their house, and murder the entire family. So that happens, and eventually the guerrillas are able to catch these people, and they give them both the death penalty, and they kill them after, performing, like, they call it people's justice. Like, they sentence them. They don't just, like, find them and kill them. They find them, they, like, detain them, bring them in front of the people who they wronged. They bring them in front of the like, family, some of the family members who weren't at the farm. But, like, I believe the girl's father, whom this person raped and murdered, is there, and he goes, like, you did this, and for this we're going to kill you. And they take him out in the woods, and they shoot them. And immediately after this scene, we are taken to the United Nations, and Che is giving a speech in front of everybody, and he's talking about how they have carried out executions, and that they will continue to carry out executions because these are the conditions in which they find themselves as they are subjected to, exploitation from American imperialism. They don't have a choice but to execute these people. They have to punish them. And what are they going to do? Put them in jail? Like, they don't have, they're fighting in the woods at this time, of course. And, for this is clearly the film, like, completely endorses the executions carried out by Che Guevara with this scene. It shows an execution, and then it shows Che Guevara defending this execution, and you as the audience are not going, oh, this is ridiculous. You're going, though, those guys deserve to die. Like, they deserve to die. They were awful people. So the movie, by doing this, by framing it in this way, because Soderbergh has chosen to include both of these events, and he has chosen to display them next to one another, right? He's completely endorsing this action, which is one of the only, I think, like, clear messages that Soderbergh puts in here. The Revolutionary Code, that's right, that's what they called it, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I would say, something that this movie does comment on. You say, of course, rapist, homophobe, and bloodthirsty criminal, you say. And this movie does document, it doesn't suggest he's a rapist or a bloodthirsty criminal, of course, but it does display some homophobia that Che has, which I don't think is there's a case really against Che's homophobia. We know that Che was racist, and of course we assume that he obviously overcame this racism by everything that he says and does while being a Marxist and a communist. However, I can fully believe that Che Guevara was probably homophobic for even while he was a communist, because that was not uncommon at the time. And in this movie, he does use the F slur in a derogative way towards these people. They give, after their training, they have this session, they give anybody who wants to leave the column, which is what they call, like, their platoons, anyone who wants to leave the column can. So they have to leave all their guns and everything, and they can leave, but it's to get rid of these people that don't want to fight. And he calls one of them the F slur derogatorily. And I have no trouble believing that Che Guevara was homophobic at the end, like, throughout his life. There's nothing. I don't really think there's anything like there are things suggesting he was racist and then he was no longer racist, but I'm not aware of anything that. I'm aware of things that suggest he was homophobic, and I'm not aware of anything that suggests that he overcame that homophobia. I believe he was probably still homophobic, and this movie suggests that he was as well. And I don't believe the movie is endorsing this. It just shows that it happens, and there's no reaction to it. He just calls this guy the F slur, and nobody reacts negatively to it. They just carry on. The whole movie carries on, and all the characters carry on in the scene. Nobody reacts in any way. Hi. Okay, so we've discussed that I had a lot harder time coming up with concrete revolutionary kicks, as we call them, revolutionary ideas. Yo, what's up, Kyle? How you doing? Oh, that's rough. I didn't even touch you, dude. The bot did. I can't say I blame the bot. Okay. Yeah, so I had trouble coming up with some concrete revolutionary kicks because this film is so passive in its storytelling. If you can call it that. Honestly, it definitely is telling a story, but in a very, very different way than all the other films that we have seen. In that it is really just there's not an arc, one coherent arc within. That's not the right. No, there's an arc. There isn't a conflict, and that's not what I want. The character we already talked about, the development of a character. There isn't a full character arc within this. There is an arc. The thing that we already talked about this, but the thing that changes is Cuba, right? Not the character of Che, right? So, because of this, it's hard to map out, these clear ideas that the movie is trying to communicate to us. Obviously, it is, it's suggesting that revolution is good and cool, maybe. It's certainly not endorsing it. It is portrayed in a heroic light, this revolution. Che Guevara being a communist is not portrayed in any negative light. It's kind of played for jokes in a sequence in which one of the other guerrillas, there's a young female character who is clearly portrayed as having the hots for Che, and when he tells her that he's married and has a kid, she literally melts into a puddle. It's incredible, but in a bad way. But they're walking, and she's asking him, she goes, "So you're a communist?" And he's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Well, you don't look like a communist." And he's like, "Well, what do communists look like?" And it's a little bit, of course, communists are mentioned a lot, as the Communist Party really being the primary one to support the revolution, while, most other movements aren't really. But, it doesn't comment on communism in any capacity. It doesn't even it doesn't touch on communism as an ideology in any way, shape, or form. It just acknowledges the fact that Che Guevara is a communist. We'll go off. Lies. I'm going to call you Lies, because your name's hard. Shoot, what was I saying? Fuck. Yo, I'm bad at this, folks. I think that's the closest it does get. Hello. I think that's the closest it does get, Vermilion, okay, to commenting on communism. And that brings us, well, thank you. Akhenaten, because that brings us into something I wanted to talk about, which is the kind of conflict between Che Guevara, who is, a anti-revisionist Marxist-Leninist communist, and Fidel Castro, who we will, God, I don't want to get into anything, but he's a nationalist revolutionary. Let's call him that. Hello, Shadows. Yo, what's up, Cromarco? It does portray like these little disagreements that they have. And there's only I wanted to say there's two, but I can only think of one right now. Shit, I don't even remember what the second one was. But one of them is that is agrarian reform. Yeah, where this is something that clearly like Che is fighting for. Oh, you're Rai? Oh, what's up, Rai? Something that, okay, I like at the end of the movie it shows Che. Yeah, we're definitely going to get to that. I do think that's one of the revolutionary kicks. Yeah, like of the ones that I can think of, that was the only clear one, because I think it might have been Yukish. Yeah, somebody made the joke about, wow, communists actually believe in personal property. And so that was the only one that I could concretely pull out. But yeah, so it does depict like Che's like insistence that agrarian reform is very necessary as a step towards socialism. I'll keep that in mind, Shadows. Thank you. So yeah, he definitely stresses the necessity of agrarian reform, and I don't believe we actually see any disagreement between Fidel and Che, but I believe they mention it about like how he won, how Fidel didn't see that as a priority, and Che like argued for it, that like it definitely wasn't that, like it was very important that's a step that they take. Yeah, I thought so, Keish. So you see that, you see shit, there was totally one other thing. I wish I took notes for this one. I don't remember what the other one was. But I do want to say, another thing that I do think it comments on about communism is you get some quotes from Che. You get the quote from Che about, a revolutionary being guided by intense and strong feelings of love. You get that, which is a comment on, communist revolutionaries. I agree, Murrow. You get the comment that, which is actually in line with the Red Detachment of Women, which we just mentioned. The comment about how not every task that a revolutionary must do is necessarily heroic or valorous, but they're all equally important, and so, one has to carry it out with the same amount of respect and energy as any other task, which is definitely in line with the Red Detachment of Women. But you get that comment from Che. The guy saying he had a saint on his side and can't be hurt. I guess, yeah, there's a guy who says, yeah, I can't be killed. I have a saint protecting me, and then immediately gets shot. And what I believe is supposed to be amusing, funny, it's supposed to be a funny part. It's very bizarre, but that does happen. I'm not sure if that's meant to be atheistic. It portrays, it was kind of sad. It portrays, I think, religion, and I don't think it has a position on that. It shows when they bury the that peasant family, they all are doing this. Che isn't, but everyone else. Che turns away to talk to somebody. I don't remember, but they're all they're giving their respect to the dead, and all that. Like, honestly, the reason that it's so hard to nail these down is just because the film, as aforementioned, isn't trying to make any sort of comment, I don't believe. It's not trying to say much beyond the fact, I believe, it's saying that Che Guevara was probably pretty cool. He was really good, and the executions he did were good, and really that's it. They're just like, hey, Che Guevara's based, like, honestly. But yeah, let's quickly touch on that at the end of the movie, they are driving in a column, in a, what do you call it? With vehicles, a convoy. They're driving in a convoy from, I believe, Las Vegas is the city, to Havana, and one of the characters, I forget his name, but he's a very young boy who joined their column. I believe he's 16 years old, and he's driving a, like, red, I don't know cars. It looks like it's one of those Cuba cars, of Bel Air or something. It looks like a Bel Air, and it's red, and it has white wall tires, and it looks really nice, and he's driving it really fast on the left-hand lane, and he drives past Che, and Che tells the driver to stop them. They stop them, and he gives them a lecture, where the guy was like, yeah, we just took it. It was one of the snipers, one of Bautista's snipers. And he's like, it probably was Santa Clara. I think Las Vegas is the first one that they go to, and then Santa Clara is after that, I think. But Che gives them a good lecture. Like I said, I'm going to need your guys' help with the dates and places and shit, because I don't know anything about that. But he says it was definitely a Cadillac. That was the brand. But an old-timey one. He says, I don't care if it was Bautista's himself. You're not driving to Havana in a stolen car. Like, I want you to go back, and you're either going to walk there, you're going to get a ride there, or you're going to take the bus. You're not going there in a stolen car. And yeah, it is important to show respect for, personal property in this. Like, if they come in a stolen car, that's what thugs or bandits, would do. That is what, pirates and thieves would do. Not principled revolutionaries who are coming to, form a new government and have the full support of the people. It would be very silly to do that. So, yes, he lectures him and sends him back. And I think that's actually the last scene in the movie, if I remember correctly. Is that happens, he gets back in the car, and it begins driving, and then the movie ends. If I recall, I'm pretty sure that's the last scene. Which, I don't know why that's the last scene. I'm not sure if they're trying to communicate anything in particular there, just showing how principled Che is, perhaps, as a revolutionary. But it's a good scene. It's a good movie. Honestly, very good movie. I'm trying to think of anything else to touch on, and I don't know. Do you have anything, chat? Like I said, I mean, I just had a really hard time with this one, and in ironing out the concrete revolutionary ideals. Let me think about, I swear I wanted to say more about Che and Fidel. Oh, that's right. The other disagreement that they have, thank God I remember it, is, Che is critical of Fidel, working with the urban, petty bourgeois reformist movement, because Che is, insisting like they're not for the same things, that you are, and like you're fighting against the system. You're fighting to overthrow it. They're not fighting it. Like, they're trying to work within it. They're reformists. And his critique basically is, these people are petty bourgeois. Now, the thing is, Che has a similar critique of Fidel himself, that Fidel is also bourgeois, but he believes that Fidel Castro and their movement generally, the Castro brothers, are a progressive force, are a progressive role in Latin America and in Cuban, Latin America generally, and Cuban particularly, in that they are, although they are bourgeois, they are left bourgeois. They are the far left of the bourgeois. They're a nationalist bourgeois who are opposed to imperialism, opposed to at least being subjected to imperialism. They reject occupation by America. They are for self-determination. They are for national liberation, and therefore that is why Che Guevara, even though he's a communist, works with this bourgeois movement, because according to communist theory on self-determination, before you can have a socialist revolution, there must be a movement for national liberation. And and national liberation is a two-step process. First, there is the movement towards self-determination, and then there is the movement towards socialism. And these are both struggles. And so a necessary step on the Cuban struggle towards socialism is to throw off these shackles, the chains of domination by an imperialist capitalist country. And so Che views Fidel as a progressive element, as a progressive force, whereas these urban petty bourgeois activists and progressives, they're for change, they're for revolution in some sense of the word. They're for they're okay with. I mean, they side with Fidel, like they're okay with overthrowing the government, right? But Che specifically says that he believes he doesn't use the word, but what he says is that if they get in power, he's okay, if Fidel gets in power, that's good. If they get in power, they're going to hand the keys right back over to America, he says. So he believes they're compradors, right? Because their class interest, their class interests align with Fidel, but their politics don't. Where Fidel wants Cuba to belong to the Cuban people, these people don't give a shit, right? So he's opposed to Fidel working with these people because he believes that it would be dangerous to do so. It'd be dangerous to the movement, to the Cuban people. I think that's it. I set that up for a third thing, but I think just those two things. To the movement and the Cuban people. It would be dangerous for these compradors to work with them. But Fidel, seeing them as class allies and seeing them as... he says that, in a bourgeois way, I think in a liberal way, it's just like a lot of people support these people, so like we need to work with them. Which you can argue is just like strategism. And Fidel was certainly a brilliant strategist. I think Fidel agrees with him that they are not allies, but wants to just lead them on for war. It's possible, like what I'm suggesting now. Yeah, Fidel is a brilliant tactician in all of these things, but honestly, I don't think he sees them as oppositional to his goals, and ultimately they aren't, because Fidel, he doesn't listen to Che, and he sides with this movement, something that's worth noting on is something that Che Guevara is wrong on, which there is a lot, but in this movie, it's not depicted in this movie, but it's relevant to what we're talking about now. But something that Che Guevara is wrong on is he believes that after the nationalist bourgeoisie are able to overthrow the Bautista regime and establish their own government, he believes there will be a harsh shift to the right, which is partially why he leaves so early, why Che leaves so early. He believes there will be a shift to the right. However, this doesn't happen. Like, he's wrong. There's not this sharp shift to the right. Like, still, there is a slow shift to the right, but it doesn't happen until much later, not even till, I can't say our lifetime, because I guess I don't know how old you guys are, but until my lifetime, that shift to the right is slowly put into place. But, like, for a long time, like, Cuba is during, like, a left, the ruling class, the ruling nationalist bourgeoisie, keep a like social democratic left line, which Che didn't think would happen. He thought they would capitulate to the right as soon as they got in power. And he was wrong about that. I don't know what that says. It's just, like, worth noting that he was wrong about that, I guess. But I think that plays into part of why he's concerned about working with these urban liberals. Ugh, Okay, I think that was the last thing that I wanted to touch on. If anyone has anything to say, you should do it. The last thing that we have left to do, unless somebody interrupts me with something interesting to talk about, is to rank this film on our tier list. So for anybody who's new, whenever we watch a movie on this, we put it on we rate it on a scale, that gauges how, basically how revolutionary it is, its weight as a piece of combat literature, as the title would suggest. We rate its efficacy. That's how I normally phrase it, isn't it? So our scale is red for essentially communist propaganda, pink for not quite communist propaganda, but portrays it in a decent light and is sympathetic to it. We have blue, which is liberal cope, and we have fascist, which is fascist. And I want to hear what y'all have to think, chat. I know where I want to put this movie, but I'm not 100% certain. And the last 3 times we've been unanimous in coming to a decision. Now, there is no one here right now, so it's very possible that I will just have to do it myself. Oh, wow, we're unanimous again. Okay, I was thinking people were going to go for red. And after the first time I watched it, I wanted to go with red too. Okay, we're not unanimous. But after watching it and analyzing it, I do think that it is more pink than it is red. Not because it takes any sort of anti-communist approach, but just because it doesn't... I have a hard time going red just because, like, it doesn't really talk about communism, like, at all. Like, this movie is not about communism at all. It's about Che Guevara, who happens to be a communist, and for that reason, it portrays communism in a sympathetic light. But it is not about, it is not celebrating the ideals of communism or any aspect of communism. It is celebrating, a communist figure, quite removed from communism, because while, Che Guevara is a communist, like, this struggle that he's participating in is not a communist struggle, I agree, it's definitely not blue, absolutely. And I do think it does work really well as combat literature, so that does bring into, but I still don't think it's communist propaganda per se as far as communist literature. It's on the border of pink and red. See, that I agree too, because, like, I think I'm struggling. Like, all the other ones, it has been like, this very clearly goes into this category. Like, it absolutely fits here. Like, there's no doubt about it. But this one I am struggling with. I just wrote my account on Che's controversy being homophobe. It's a bit long for Twitch. Am I allowed to paste it in parts? I hope it doesn't get interrupted by other comments. All. Hello, Bree the Bumblebee. Why don't you, I'm going to post our Discord link, Vermilion, and if you want to join the Discord, you can post it in there, and we can read it. Don't we decide after part 2? We could do that. We could have them as one unit. I was going to do them separately. That's I don't know. How do we want to do that? Because, like, really, I don't think they... I don't feel like they kind of... I can't decide whether I think they work as standalone films or not. Because I don't know how much, like, of a narrative arc the second one even adds, or if it's much more the same, just, like, abstractly portraying historical events. Oh, you've never used Discord? Well, okay, that's fine. Then you can just post it in here, Vermilion. Yeah, it is basically a 1 hour movie split in two. Like, I think that's how it's meant. They were filmed back to back, and they were screened as like a 5 hour epic with an intermission. In some places, in Europe, I think it was like 2 separate tours. But here, yeah, it was like screened as a 5 hour movie all at once, which I can't fucking imagine doing. But I don't know, maybe. Actually, yeah, I don't know, maybe I could do that. It just seems... It's all really good. It doesn't feel that long, I guess, but I don't know. It's just a lot. And it's not like the first one like ends on a cliffhanger or anything, really. It's just like... The ending actually reminds me a lot of Lawrence of Arabia, because it's just like him driving down the road. Albeit with a... very different from Lawrence of Arabia. He's driving down the road with, you know, a full convoy of his fellow soldiers and revolutionaries. Whereas in Lawrence of Arabia, he's driving down the road by himself, going the opposite way as the soldiers. This way he's going the same way as the soldiers. Interesting parallel, maybe. Yeah, I think we should still rate them as separate entities, though. I'm very aware that Cuban society had strong homophobic tendencies, and the revolution, although promised progress in every sector for almost all repressed groups within the society, did nothing to combat the discrimination against the LGBT Cubans for the first 2 decades. And the condition worsened when Fidel enforced anti-homosexual laws and decried homosexuality as bourgeois. And later, it was discovered that gay men were mounted by the CIA and were involved in counter-revolutionary activities, which was considered as a crime and generalized in all the homosexual Cubans by many. All of this yet to touch on anything about Che's opinions on or attitudes toward the homosexual in Cuba. However, at one time the Cuban government enforced conscription, and those who would not serve, such as Jehovah's Witnesses, conscientious objectors, and those who were not allowed to serve, such as gay men, did their terms of service in agricultural camps as a part of UMAP. Things quickly got out of hand and became downright abusive. Those serving in these domestic military camps were beaten, worked long hours, etc. Let's not forget that these camps were, and still, brought up to scandal Che, not knowing that these camps didn't open until Che was gone. Oh, you're saying they were, like, used against Che? Was gone to fight revolutions in the Congo and Bolivia. Having stepped down from all government positions. Right, of course. Around 3 years after these camps were opened, several concerned guards informed Fidel of the abuses that took place within the camps, and Fidel, being curious, did an interesting thing. He went undercover as a gay man into one of them at night, and revealed himself as a guard who was about to beat him next morning. Later, the UMAP... Cuba's like a pretty small island with like a couple million as the population. Fidel Castro is like the most famous person in the country. That seems really... I didn't know that. That's very interesting. Later, the UMAP camps were shut down. However, new camps under a similar purpose were opened but never reached the levels of abuse of the UMAP camps. Also, not to forget how Fidel later took responsibility for the horrid treatment of LGBT Cubans at the hands of machismo. The camps are long since gone, though. Was Che homophobe? There's no sound argument for an account of that being true, at least to my knowledge. Okay, well, thank you for sharing, Vermilion. And that is quite intensive. Yeah, I'm not super intimately familiar with Cuban history. So I definitely appreciate all the insight y'all are giving into it. Nobody's commented on my jacket, which is I'm really disappointed by. I'm intentionally wearing my gorilla jacket that I got before I was a communist and only recently realized looks like the jackets that the Cuban guerrillas wore. But nobody said anything, and it's just, it's just tarnishing my my spirits over here. I'm transgender, and I just want equal rights and also medical care for everyone. That would be nice. Breathe the Bumblebee. Those are good things. Looks like Mao, too. I don't think... They don't have collar... No, they do have the collars. They just have the red things here. I'm almost positive I've read excerpts of Che's early stuff being homophobic. I'm actually 100% positive that I have. I don't have it on hand, but there's also stuff he wrote about being racist, and I think there's a lot to suggest. That's what I was getting at earlier, that there's written evidence that he was at one point racist, and then his actions and words beyond that go to suggest otherwise. But I don't know about the homophobia. I'm almost positive I've read something he's written that's homophobic, though. I think you kind of look like that one guy from the Beatles, but I don't remember his name. Thanks. I don't know. John Lennon? I don't look like John Lennon, but that's the only person you could possibly be talking about. I think I look more like John Lennon than any of the other ones, but I don't look like John Lennon. But thanks. My glasses are vaguely similar to his. Probably. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's just the glasses. Okay, so we never decided. Pink or red? I'll look into it later and post it in the Discord if I find it, but I am almost positive I've read it before because I think it actually might have been some anti-communist propaganda I was reading, and it had a bunch of bullshit, but the stuff about it had quotes from all these different Marxists trying to suggest that they were all homophobic, and I think all of the quotes were fabricated except for Che Guevara's was real, I think, but I'm not sure. Breathe the Bumblebee says pink. Everybody was saying pink. Who was saying red? I think Quiche said red. And I think Rye said maybe red. Yeah, Quiche said red. That's not even funny, Murrow. I'm aware as well of Che's prejudice against the blacks when he first came in contact with him, which I read in his diary. I believe he was 20 years old at the time. I did not encounter any homophobic remarks, though. Okay, Vermilion. I could be misremembering, honestly. I thought I read something, but I could be misremembering. Okay, I think we're going to start... No, we have to come to a decision. I can't just leave it in the air of red or pink. I don't feel like we should do an in-between, because that's just going to make everything so much more complicated if we do an in-between. I agree. Okay, I think I'm going to go with Pink. The logic being that while I do agree that it is incredibly useful as combat literature, the category that it fits into still, like, it's definitely not communist propaganda. Like, that is definitively true. It's not communist propaganda. And I think it goes a similar route to that of the other movie that we have in the Pink category, which is Goodbye Lenin, which portrays communism, in a non-negative light. It sort of portrays communism in a neutral light. And I think this film does the same thing, where it is not saying that communism is the only way forward and that communism is the solution to, all contradictions and everything. It's definitely not saying that. It is merely just portraying proletarian history and revolution and a communist figure in a sympathetic and nuanced light, rather than fully endorsing communism and its ideals. I think this movie, I don't even think, the people who made this movie, aren't communists. It should also be noted. The movie that we have in our red category is The Red Detachment of Women, which is made by, which is made within the 1960s in China, right? This movie is made in the early 2010s. How do you say that? Because late 2000s, I feel like implies, you say late 1900s, you mean the latter half of that century. But I mean it's 2007, right? So late aughts, I could say? Sure, late aughts. That's the only way I know how to say that. But it's made within the late aughts in, I actually don't know what country it's filmed in. I think Venezuela. I don't know. Actually, I think it's filmed in Europe. Fuck. I'm gonna look it up. I don't remember where it's filmed. Is there a Wikipedia page? I don't want to go to the Warner Brothers website. That's so hard. That's literally so hard. Production. Oh my god. Where is it filmed? Where is it filmed? Yeah, it is. Okay, it is just called UN Headquarters. Oh, UN General Assembly. Okay. So they wanted to film it in Cuba, but they weren't allowed to go because of the embargo. They filmed... So it was Santa Clara. So it was filmed in Mexico for some of it. Yeah, it's all over the place. Yeah, but who finances it? I mean, it's all it's Global North money, it's Western generally. I can't call it an American film though, because it's not. It doesn't have one country that I can point to, which is making this very hard. I just want an easy answer, but I don't think I'm going to get one. But notably, not made by communists for communists, like our other film that we have in the red category. So again, I feel like it's much closer to our pink category, even though I do think it has more poignancy or weight as combat literature than a film like Goodbye Lenin. Because Goodbye Lenin is not about revolution or anything. It's about life under communism, sort of. Where this one is about revolution. But I think now I'm going to comfortably put it in our pink category. And with that, I think that pretty much wraps up our show today. We've gone a bit short comparatively to our other stuff, but we've had a lot more stuff to talk about. And a lot more people here. I guess it's because it's a Tuesday that there's not anybody here, but I'm very thankful to those of you who are here for sticking with me, through this horse shit that we call a Twitch stream here. So I'm just gonna play the trailer. Like normally I would allude to the next film that we're gonna watch, but we all know what the next film is gonna be. Hello, Future Aristocracy. Yeah, of course, no problem. Thanks for being here. So yeah, normally I would allude to a damn, I wanted to touch the heart emoji. Allude to the movie that we're gonna watch, but we all know what it is. It's Che Part 2 this week. So I'm just gonna go ahead and play the trailer for that, and then we'll raid somewhere. But yeah, thanks everybody for being here. And if Sal was here, actually, she would ask me to read the schedule. So let me read the schedule real quick. Because I'm a good... I don't want to say that. I was going to say I'm a good boy. But, oh, I don't think she has the schedule for this week up. It is no longer the week... Yeah, she doesn't have the schedule for this week up. So I can't tell you what to expect. Presumably they'll be streaming on Thursday about something. News is on Friday usually. And maybe... I think Kooks is talking about doing something for this Saturday, actually. So expect a Kooks stream on Saturday. And then on Sunday, I will see you on Discord. If you're cool. And if you're not cool, I won't see you. And I hate you. And with that, I will see y'all then.
This is a national emergency. Is the United States going to sit back and let Castro create another communist revolution in Bolivia, in the heart of South America? What if Che Guevara is here?
iremos.